Doctors of Reddit, what is the funniest thing you've heard someone say while under the effects of anesthesia? I feel like I got hit by a train. Guy actually got hit by a ducking train. After a really bad car accident, I was pinned in the car for an hour while they cut me out. Apparently, the EMT, who I knew from high school, asked how I felt. I said I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. Also, in shock and very injured, insisted that I could climb out myself if everybody just backed up. Then, on the helicopter ride, I asked if we would have flying over a volcano and if I could look out the window. Pain makes me weird, I guess. I took care of an 11-year-old boy in the ER a little while back. I gave him ketamine for a fracture reduction, or in other words setting and splinting of a broken bone. As he was coming around he started with typical stream of consciousness babbling, and then he seemed to snap awake to say, "I'm duckingly it, I'm gonna do so many drugs when I get older," to the amusement of his parents. They thought it was funny and cute, but I'm pretty sure I created a monster. I'm generally a pretty even-keeled guy, basically never feel anxious, but when I had my knee surgery they gave me a Valium because they give one to just about everyone. Man, I did not know it was possible to feel that calm. I totally get why people get hooked on that stuff, and how if you got used to that level of serenity it'd be hard to come back down. Told this story before, but surgeon here was doing varicose veins surgery on a very posh middle-aged lady. Very cut-class accent. There was an anesthetic that we used that sometimes induced some hallucinations, either going under or coming out of anesthesia, and heard some funny things. Anyway, this lady was in recovery, just coming out of the anesthetic. The team were around waiting for her to wake up and gag a little on the tube in her throat, for breathing, so we knew it was time to remove it. She gagged, we removed the tube, she smacked her lips and said loudly, in her incredible accent, "That's the best bit of cock I have had in years." The whole recovery room just fell about laughing. Luckily she didn't remember it. Edit, okay. Cut glass. Typo. Edit 2, thank you for the gold, kind stranger. My first. Not a doctor, but my dad had been given the goofy juice and was about to be wheeled into surgery. He looks at the anesthesiologist and asks, "Will the nurses have big titties?" My mom and his mom were in the room, laughing hysterically. The anesthesiologist chuckled and said, "Okay, yeah, you're ready for surgery." When I woke from having my wisdom teeth removed, I asked the nurse to take me to the beach and release me back into the ocean so I could be with my people. She kept refusing, so I started accusing her of fiddling with me whilst I was asleep. I ended up getting moved to a different recovery area, where I was then asked to be quiet because I thought I was listening to Nicki Minaj, but in fact it was just me slaughtering the lyrics to an imaginary beat. While having dental work done under the influence of laughing gas, I, female, mid-teens at the time, tried very hard to flirt with the, also female, married, dentist. I was not in any way subtle. She was not at all amused. Awkward. Also, not anesthesia but dilaudid. I called my husband from the ER once rambling about how totally amazing it was that we have fingers, they're so helpful, and they're like, always there. They're like little friends that you get to carry around with you everywhere. It didn't take him too long to figure out they had me high as a kite, but he was super confused at first. They put me on dilaudid when I had my appendix out. My father was sitting in the ER with me and I woke up out of a dead sleep and started talking about the difference between the 7.3 and 6.04 diesels. Then I turned around and noticed that he had an understandably confused look on his face. He said, "What in the cornbread fuck are you talking about?" We had a conversation about that subject 2 weeks prior and I just picked up where we left off and continued. I got my wisdom teeth out too. Hadn't for the first time. I was 16 years/0. All I remember was feeling great, I mean seriously amazing. When I sorta came to, I remember asking how much longer till it's over. And they said we're done. The nurse brought me out to the car with my parents, and helped me out to the car. And on the car ride home I asked why the nurse was so friendly. My parents told me that I confessed my love for short-haired brunettes, and that she would be my wife because she was perfect and I loved her. Haha, I had no game at the time. I had a lump removed from my boob a few years ago. The table they had me on was shaped like a T, so my arms were outstretched. As I was passing out, I said to the nurses, "I feel like Jesus." They had to tell me about it when I awoke. I had jaw surgery last year and started to get really scared as I sat in my hospital bed waiting to be wheeled into surgery. My mom was with me and I told her how much I wished my dog was there because snuggling her always makes me feel better. I guess having my dog on my mind turned into some weird thoughts once they gave me drugs because apparently I started crying out of the fear that they were going to give me dog teeth. Edit, I thought I'd show you the dog in question. All of our respective teeth are safely in our own mouths. On the other side, when I got my tonsils removed, the doctor said we call this Jackson juice, as he hooked up the anesthesia to the fourth, because this is what Michael Jackson killed himself with. I then woke up with no tonsils. My boyfriend, as he was being wheeled into recovery, yelled to me, "Honey, you can call me Shrek from now on." He has no idea why he wanted me to call him Shrek. I had to have surgery a few months later, and when I had woken up, I called my boyfriend on the hospital phone and told him he could call me Fiona from now on. After I got my teeth removed and woke up, I had an uncontrollable urge to drive. I had recently got my permit. I was like, "Let me drive, I want to go." My mom had to physically restrain me by putting her forearm against my throat against a wall. The nurse also had to help restrain me. I cooled down after like 5 minutes of this. As I was passing out to get my wisdom teeth done, the nurse who was putting me out said something about, "You may feel an itching or burning in your genitals, please resist the urge to scratch it," and I answered with no problem, "You can take care of my genitals for me," and she answered with, "Maybe I should make it so you don't wake up," as my eyes closed, and that's the last thing I remembered. I'm sure the next hour or two was terrifying as I contemplated whether she'd killed me and if I deserved to die. Not a drive, but a roller derby girl who witnessed teammate break their leg. When the paramedics gave her the whistle of pain relief, she went from screaming in pain to saying, "I hope that cute paramedic has to cut off my pants cause he might like what he sees." Made more hilarious by the fact she is married-ect. When I woke up after my appendectomy, my mom says that I couldn't stop talking about how I no longer was wearing underwear. I then proceeded to tell every person who came to see me in the hospital that I was not wearing underwear for the next 8 hours. Not a doctor, but I sprained my knee a few weeks back. I ignored it because my knees have always been shitty and I thought it was just a particularly bad 24 hours, but once it swelled to twice the size, causing the kneecap to press down a nerve and create the weirdest, most awful feeling spasms, I rushed to the ER. I took a muscle relaxer, but I don't even think it was just that. I think my anxiety from the pain shot through the roof and I dissociated, a side effect of anxiety where your brain is like, "Holy f***, I can't handle this anymore," and basically detaches you from reality to a certain extent and dumps feel-good neurotransmitters into your blood, so that plus the muscle relaxer placed me in something similar to an opiate high. The doctors and nurses kept asking me, "What did you take?" because it seemed like I was f***ed up on something like Oxy, and I'd just slow mumble, "Wah-uh. I told you, a Skelexine, star up." After my x-rays, I just lay in bed, watching Antique Roadshow, and proceeded to tell the nurse every thought that popped into my head about the items on screen. Is that 18th century? Probably 18th century, yeah, Georgian. Or a Coco. Right? I don't really know the difference. One's French, one's British. Okay, I do know the difference, I guess, but not really. It's so charming, it's so charming. What does it cost, tell me? She was just like, "Okay, honey, okay." Obligatory, not a doctor, but when my friend woke up from general anesthesia after his kidney stone removal surgery, he turned to the anesthesiologist, locked eyes, and dead straight mumbled, "Did you break my dongus?" The poor guy has to excuse himself from the room, he was laughing so hard. Never came back. My friend's sister was slowly waking up after a surgery and was still a bit out of it from the meds. Her family came into the room and asked how she was feeling, and her response was, "I feel fine, but man, that nurse is ch," as the nurse was standing next to her. Luckily the nurse was able to laugh about it with them. I was on a shit ton of laughing gas and dilauded after a nearly botched C-section with my youngest kid, and told the nurse she was a twat barnacle and gave the poor girl the finger. My mom said she laughed about it, but I guess I was mad and thought they were laughing at me. I was apparently angry because I couldn't have spaghetti right that second. Underwent a procedure that required sedation with ketamine. I screamed for half an hour in the post-op area. I scared the patients and fought off the staff, little 5-foot-tall me. When I stopped tripping, the staff told me that they had to use enough sedatives and dilaudid to take down a grown man 3 times my size. Apparently when I was getting my septum fixed, I yelled at the doctor for lying to me about how the stuff prior to the anesthesia would taste. "That was not a banana, you liar. Have you eaten a banana before?" Then post-surgery I reportedly burst into tears over a particularly heartwarming episode of In the Night Garden because the Tomley Boos couldn't find their toothbrushes. My dad thought this was all great fun. Finally was abandoned by family, at which point I asked some poor nurse to give me my phone, and everyone in my recent contacts list got selfies, focused on my nose, followed by messages about how these drugs were fine. I was 21. Not a doctor, but I kept asking if this was the stuff, followed by "Oh yeah, this is the stuff." The stuff was what they give you before anesthesia. When they brought me in the OR and went to put the mask on me, I pushed them away and asked, "Is this the stuff that puts me to sleep?" They said no, but proceeded to put the mask on, and my last words to them were, in a giggly voice, "MHMM. Okay, bye." Edit. Oh yeah, I also was screaming the whole time under the stuff, "Please don't let me say anything stupid." I'm sure I followed that with more stupid shit. I recently got surgery on my foot, and while I was still high my mother recorded me saying things like, "Where's my ducking foot? Mom, the communist took my foot. Where's my foot? All I have is a snub. Those fucking communists took my foot and left me with a snub." I got pissed because they didn't have Coke but had Pepsi. Pepsi? Who the ducking hell drinks Pepsi? Duck Pepsi. Called the nurse Samantha, her name was Brittany. Yelled at nobody named Susan. Claimed to have 9 children. Apollo and Dante being my favorite 2, and Susan being my least favorite child, who I have locked in the basement. We don't have a basement. Cried because I had to pee and sang a parody version of Set Me Free from the TV show The Get Down called Let Me Pee. Cried because I wanted fucking chicken nuggets. When asked how I was going to eat them because I was high, I said something about ripping them up into pieces and putting them in a bowl of honey mustard, then I'll eat it like soup. Looks like I'm the only doctor who has responded to this so far. For general anesthesia and even conscious sedation, people don't usually say funny things. Most people's funny comment stories are from being on pain medications, which is analgesia, not anesthesia. I literally sedate people all the time and they just pass out. Now, people with hospital delirium, those stories are funny. Not a doctor, but recently had surgery because my ovary was in the wrong place, as well as a bunch of endometriosis. I barely remember going into the operating room because when they were prepping me they gave me something to calm down. As soon as I woke up I straight off asked to see my SO, they wouldn't let him in. So then whenever I saw a nurse I kept asking them to thank doctors for me. I just really wanted the doctors to know how much I appreciated their effort, and that seemed so darn important at the time.